As you can see, we are continuing to have difficulties with Inside Number 9 tonight. We're working on it, and as soon as I get any information about what's going on, I will, of course, let you know. As I was saying, as soon as we've identified the issue... Hello? Is someone there?
Welcome back to the evolution of horror. My name is Mike, and as ever, I am your host. If you're tuning in for the first time, then welcome. Usually on this podcast, we explore and dissect the evolution and history of the horror genre by looking at particular subgenres across several weeks. And in January, we will begin our journey through the evolution of the zombie movie. We are currently kind of in a break in between seasons, but I couldn't resist a little bit of bonus content. Now, on Halloween night, I'm sure most UK listeners out there are aware, we were treated to a very exciting live television event. I am, of course, talking about the Halloween special of Inside Number 9. For anyone out there who doesn't know, Inside Number 9 is a TV show that's written and created by and starring Reece Shearsmith and Steve Pemberton. It's an anthology show. Each episode is its own kind of self-contained half-hour story, almost like a little play. But the programme is, as well as being very funny, it's also very, very dark. It really dabbles in the horror genre in certain episodes. And then in other episodes, it goes into full-blown horror territory, and that was definitely the case with the live Halloween special. And after the Halloween special aired, I know that pretty much everyone out there who watched it was talking about it, and we did get a lot of requests, a lot of tweets, and a lot of people asking if we could cover it on the podcast, and I absolutely have been dying to talk about it these last few weeks. I just haven't really had the chance, but the perfect opportunity came along this week, because I actually got the chance to sit down and interview the stars and creators of Inside Number 9, Reece Shearsmith and Steve Pemberton. Now, these guys, they've been heroes of mine for a very long time. They rose to fame in the late 90s with a comedy sketch show called The League of Gentlemen. It was those two, along with Mark Gatiss and Jeremy Dyson, and they created this strange comedy about this little village in the north of England full of these weird and wonderful, wacky local characters. That ran for 3 seasons. There was also a Christmas special. There was even a film. And then since the show finished, the 4 members of the League of Gentlemen have kind of all dispersed and done their own projects. Mark Gatiss has famously gone on to write and star in the TV adaptation of Sherlock that stars Benedict Cumberbatch. And he's also currently writing a new TV adaptation of Dracula, which is going to be airing next year. Meanwhile, Jeremy Dyson has gone on to write and direct a whole range of different interesting projects, perhaps most notably this year's brilliant Ghost Stories, which he wrote and directed alongside friend of the pod, Andy Nyman. And Reece and Steve, they've also gone off, and as I mentioned, they've done Inside Number 9 and another brilliantly weird, deranged sort of comedy horror drama called Psychoville. So all 4 of these guys are absolutely in love with the horror genre. They all do some really interesting, unique projects, and they've come together this year. They've reunited to do a live tour of the League of Gentlemen. So this week they were out and about promoting the DVD of the live show, and I got to sit down and chat to them about all things League of Gentlemen and Inside Number 9. Now, later on in this episode, I'll be joined by the brilliant Adam Robinson, and we will be dissecting that Inside Number 9 Halloween special in spoilerific detail. So stay tuned for that. But first, here is my chat with its stars and creators, Reece Shearsmith and Steve Pemberton. Okay, Reece Shearsmith and Steve Pemberton, welcome. Hello.
Hello there.
Hello. First of all, I want to ask you, this is a horror movie podcast predominantly. What is your favourite horror movie?
I always have a sort of triangle of The Wicker Man, Don't Look Now, and Theatre of Blood.
Amazing.
So I'm in the middle of that triangle, but I think, we've just lost Nick Rogue, and so I've got to pick Don't Look Now just incredible filmmaking and a film that will stay with you once you've seen it forever.
Yeah.
Is it a horror though?
Well, that's the question.
Oh,
I think
definitely,
it is.
definitely.
I think it is. It's a horror of grief, isn't it? It's
Yeah.
a terrible, bleak film.
Mm.
I would say probably The Exorcist is a great horror film. I don't watch it very often because I find it too sort of troubling.
Yeah.
Because there's something deeply sort of evil about it. I think it really still feels that palpably strange. There's something, and Exorcist 3 as well, which is obviously sort of found its own.
It's an incredible jump scare.
Yeah, great jump scares, isn't it? Yeah, so it is hard though, isn't it?
Yeah. Do you have this might be the same answer, but do you have a kind of scariest movie experience that you can remember?
Yeah, that's a good question. Oh, yeah, well, maybe The Exorcist 3, when the shears come out and she marches across, and she gets her head chopped. That was a really big, one of the first sort of great zoom in pan jump scares. When they're marching down the corridor. But and also the TV version of Woman in Black really frightened me.
Yes,
Mark showed me that years ago, and I was really scared by it. And she comes looming down from the ceiling.
Yeah,
in the
really
middle of the
creepy.
night, sort of relentlessly. When you think it's gone, it's not gone. So that was quite scary.
Steve, what about you?
Yeah, I mean, I remember as a kid seeing stuff which really disturbed me, and I think those, the two movies I mentioned, like The Wicker Man and Don't Look Now, have these endings which are they're very sad, and because evil triumphs over good. And they did the same thing with Hammer House of Horror TV series, where and it didn't occur to me what it was that was so troubling about that series, and it was years later I realized it's because evil always triumphs over good.
Yeah.
So you don't get that catharsis. But
Yeah.
in recent years, the Blair Witch Project, the ending of that, me and Jeremy went to see it when we were filming League of Gentlemen, and to watch that in the cinema, to get to that last horrific 10 minutes, and I was scared, and that is that takes a lot to scare me. And this is someone, things which you watch as a kid which scare you is very different to being scared now as an adult, when you've seen everything. You think you've seen everything, and for something to get under your skin, and that's why, of course, it's spawned endless.
And a lot of
imitators.
the Japanese, sort of The Ring and the Grudge, they were frightened me when I first
Really
saw them.
creepy, weren't they?
Yeah, they're really creepy, and they do it very well.
So I spoke to Andy Neumann on this podcast, and he mentioned one of his scariest experiences was watching with you, Reece, Wreck. And
Wreck.
You guys watched it together,
Yes,
and he
we
said
did.
he was kind of in a cold sweat by the end.
It was relentlessly frightening, yeah.
Yeah.
Great for being sort of the found footage thing, but managing to do the scares and without any music or anything, and very effectively, sort of the noise of that corridor and everything in that house was great.
Yeah, it's wonderful. So tell me a bit about the League of Gentlemen. So the live show obviously has happened this year. We had the Christmas specials last year. What made you guys want to return to Royston Vasey then this sort of last year?
Well, we kind of nominally marked a 20-year anniversary, so we'd done. We first appeared on the radio in 1997. Mm-hmm. 98, we filmed our first TV series, and 99 it went out. So we knew it was around that time. We could have picked any one of those years, but we decided that we would make the Christmas specials it was Christmas 2017, wasn't it?
Yeah.
So 20 years since we first started at the BBC on the radio. And we talked about it for a long time. I'm glad we left it quite a long time before we came back and did something again, because it isn't something which has been endlessly regurgitated and repeated. I felt that people weren't sick of it, and that people were ready to see those characters again, and it blew us away really just how much interest there still was doing the live show and the TV specials. People just were in love with these characters, and the more horrendous we made it, the more they loved them.
Yeah, I mean, it's got this kind of, obviously, this fan base of people that have loved it for the last 20 years. Were you ever thinking or worried about whether or not new audiences would embrace it? I mean, comedy's changed a lot since, 20 years ago. Were you ever worried that any of these characters or these jokes had dated?
We didn't really think about it. We only thought about the truth of the characters' journeys, if that's not too pretentious to say anything, where we just thought, what would they be doing now if we were able to return to them? And so if we thought anything could be made still funny from their journeys in their lives, then we would do it. And it was all about what appealed to us and what characters we would like to revisit, because we could have done endless variations of a set of characters coming back, couldn't we? Because we did so many, and there was so many to choose from. So it was hard to actually do a trot round and get everyone in. But we just thought, of the ones that we thought we would like to see, and hopefully they chimed with an audience. But
I think we were aware, obviously, that there's been a lot of changes in the past 20 years. But we thought what the point of bringing the show back is for the fans of it to enjoy what they enjoyed about it 20 years ago, and that's what we wanted to stay true to. And we thought if we do a toothless version, which pulls back from a lot of the excesses that we did find ourselves doing in the late 90s, then it wouldn't be true to us, and it wouldn't be true to what people hope to get from the show. So we took a few risks, and we updated a few things. So the character of Barbara, for example, we kind of made her much more of a champion of transgender issues, and some people liked that, some people didn't. But then you've always had that with the League of Gentlemen. It's been quite Marmitey show. Some people were terrified by it. Some people were terrified by the local shopkeepers, and to us, they were just cuddly little mass murderers. Brother, sister / husband, wife.
Mr. and Mrs. Tiggywinkle.
Sir, I'm here on police business. I found this boy's wallet. Local boy?
He's not from our town.
Ah, do we know his parents?
I said we'd never seen him before. Did Tubbs do right?
You did it beautifully, Tom.
Well, that's the thing. You know, horror kind of courses through the veins of this show in a way, doesn't it? I mean, was there ever you guys have kind of dabbled now with Inside Number 9 in kind of straight horror. What do you think? Is there a connect? It feels like there's a fine line between comedy and horror, and they're both kind of, in some ways, they have a similar reputation to each other in terms of art and that kind of thing. What is it about these kind of two genres that sort of interest you and cross over, do you think?
Yeah, well, that is interesting, isn't it? I mean, the mechanics and the nuts and bolts of a scare and a joke are obviously quite interlinked, and the release that you get when you're watching a horror film, there is a scare, there's immediately a big laugh after it. So it's all very connected.
Feels like timing is important somehow as well, doesn't it?
Yeah. And you can see why people are horrendously editing sequences. I watched Misery again the other day for the first time in a long time. I showed my daughter it. She didn't want to see it, but I said, "You're going to watch this."
How old is she?
Did you tie her to the bed?
Yes. I hobbled her first. She's 16. So
okay.
Slightly too young to see it, but I thought she needs to see Annie Wilkes. Yeah. And I was then watched there was some extras on the DVD, and it was Rob Reiner talking about the sequence when he's out of his room trying to get out basically, and she's coming back with him with the paper.
And the penguin is
the penguin's the other way, due south, whatever it is. Yes. And just the cut in between her coming back and him dragging himself back to lock himself back in the room before she's back is brilliant. And he said that they went back and forth with the edit of that endlessly until they felt that it was right. And the tinkering of that, really can make a sequence, obviously. And he said the music helped and everything. So it was fascinating to think it isn't about, you capture it on the day when you're filming it, but then, of course, the storytelling is in the edit.
Definitely.
It always is.
There are some sequences in League of Gentlemen, particularly in the Christmas special you guys did, the original Christmas special, the sort of portmanteau one, that is some of the sort of most frightening stuff I had seen at the time on television. I mean, did you was there ever that temptation to kind of push the horror, push it, over comedy in times like that?
Well, we certainly did with the Christmas special, I think. It was the point where I think we started to get more interested in narrative. So we came very much from a sketch background. And in fact, when we did our early shows in London and Edinburgh, the characters weren't connected by being in the same place at all. It was just lights down, lights up on a different character. So I think you saw there the beginnings of us, getting more interested in building sequences and building stuff outside of a sketch. Yeah. And so to take a story, all 3 or 4 separate stories as we did in that special, was really exciting for us. And we knew, Christmas and horror, like comedy and horror, go hand in hand. So the tradition of the Christmas ghost story. So we knew immediately we wanted to do something scary, proper in the genre of horror. Whereas I think a lot of the horror in the first 2 series, it's horrific because you're not expecting it, and from a comedy or from a comedy sketch show, or some of the endings to sketches, or some of the characters like Papa Lazarou coming in, you think, where the hell's this come from? Whereas in a framing device, which is a more traditional horror framing device, the sort of portmanteau film, we felt we could really wear our influences on our sleeve there, and look at different aspects of horror. And we wanted each of those stories to have a different feel to them. One was set in the 70s, the vampire one. One was the Victorian Dr. Chinnery one, and the Charlie and Stella one was quite a sort of modern aesthetic. So and it was really successful, and for a lot of people that's the favourite thing we ever did, and I think we count it amongst the best achievements with the League of Gentlemen,
Yeah,
don't we?
it sort of distilled everything that we liked and were getting good at. You know, we were very fresh to television, and it was so exciting to be able to draw on all our influences and think we could do a version of this or that, you know. And I think that people sort of went with it and understood. You know, those that got it really got it.
Lotti, was passiert?
You could never give me boys, Wolf, so I had to provide my own. Okay, boys. This is no longer a rehearsal. Enjoy this performance, Wolf. It will be your last.
And that third series then goes in quite a kind of weird, sort of different direction tonally and everything. I was a huge fan of that third series, but what was that sort of experience like for you guys in making that and sort of taking it in a slightly different direction?
Well, we used what we'd learned from the Christmas special, and we said, wouldn't it be interesting to have longer stories with these characters? And we kind of have always not wanted to rest on our laurels and not wanted to tread a path that we've gone down before, and it's probably been the undoing of us in some ways because people like familiarity, and it was such a jarring change. I think that third series, we are really proud of it, and the kind of really unusual narrative structure of it, where each episode ended at the same point in time. But it did change a lot of things, and again, it had a very Marmite effect. A lot of people coming back to it now, aren't they, saying it's the best thing that you've done.
Yeah, although at the time it was like, oh, well, we won't talk about the third series.
It's weird, isn't it? Sometimes these things take a while, sort of word of mouth or whatever, or rewatches.
Yeah, we were very much of the opinion that it would be terrible to be a fan of it and then feel like we're just churning out something that was predictable because it was the same again.
Because it could become very safe in its own subversive way. If you keep doing that, then you become inured to it. It becomes not shocking anymore.
Yeah.
So if you'd had the local shop still stand there for years and years and years, and people came in and they got killed, there's no shock value there, or nothing surprising about that whatsoever. So we've always been ones for getting rid of and killing people off at the earliest possible opportunity, and we took that to an extreme in Psychoville, where the second series we just bumped off one of the main characters every single week.
Yeah, that was brutal, But it was lovely to do the third series of The League because we were spending, where we had never had time with one character, where we had this sort of general arc of someone's story each week, and it was nice to do a bit longer with Jeff and a bit longer with Lance and all the characters that would only be fleeting, would have fleeting visits to. And of course that's the appeal of what essentially is a sketch show, and you don't like this one thing, you've got only a minute and a half before you can bear to struggle through to the next thing that you might like. But when you're with a character that you might not particularly like it, then the half hour is written off, of course. But then that was what we wanted to do. We thought that's a different way of telling stories.
Yeah. So tell us a bit about the live show then. For people that didn't get a chance to go see it, now they can obviously get the DVD. What can people expect from the live show?
Well, we decided to do two halves. So the first half is us performing as we did back in the 90s, where we started in Edinburgh and London on the Fringe, and we used to wear dinner jackets, myself, Mark and Reece, and we would have very minimal props and costumes. So we did the whole first half, a lot of classic sketches that people will remember, like Go Johnny Go 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 Go.
Jacks are worth 10, kings are worth 3.
Apart from one-eyed jacks, which are wild cards.
Yeah, but we'll come to those in a minute.
Round 1 you get a hand of 9, round 2 a hand of 7.
2's a wild card.
But we'll come to those in a minute.
Apart from diamonds, which retain their face value.
Except the king of diamonds, obviously.
Obviously. We play in sequence unless you can match a pair or play a card in ascending or descending order.
If you can, that's a Go Johnny Go 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 Go.
You stand up, pick up all the cards at the table and shout, Go Johnny Go 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 Go!
The winner is the man with the most tricks after 15 hands.
You'll pick up the rest as we play.
And then the second half, you get the full Royston Vasey experience with music, makeup, songs, costumes, and that was a follow-on, really, from the specials that we made, the anniversary specials that we made.
Yes.
So you get to see what became of Tubbs in The Wife Mine. Is Pauline really dead? What happened next for Jeff? So it was something for everybody, really. Some old classic favourites, but some new material as well.
Cruelest thing you guys ever did, killing off Pauline in that way last year.
Yes.
So we didn't even get to see it. I was like, what?
Horrible, yeah. Stupid death.
It must be. Is there a tricky balance for you guys in kind of hitting those? I suppose you call it sort of fan service beats. I suppose bringing the characters that people want to see, the catchphrases that people want to hear, but also, stretching your own artistic, doing something new and doing something bold and different with these characters as well.
Yeah, it is. I mean, it's always a balance. You think, on the one hand, your brain is thinking, well, you can't not do all the classics that people want to expect to see. So it would be a weird night if it was all new stuff. People groan, don't they, when you do your new album?
Yeah, exactly.
So we tried to do a bit of both, but also find it a pathway through where we could feel like we were continuing the story, and there was some value in coming to see it, and yet if you knew it, you would be rewarded with seeing all the stuff you liked. And we did have half an eye on people not knowing it, but we thought, if they're funny in themselves, the sketches will... And lots of people actually told us, didn't they, that they would bring a friend who'd never experienced it, and they said they didn't know what was going on, but they found it really enjoyable.
Yeah, I think you get caught up in the madness of it. And
it's its own thing for the night, you go along for the ride.
Definitely. And I love there's a little John Landis cameo in there as well.
Yeah, John was very happy to come and do Don Dredge.
I love that. Did you just ask him outright?
Yes,
and I was at the Brighton performance, and I think he was actually there then, wasn't he?
He was here and he came across to see it, yeah.
Fantastic. Amazing. I've got to ask you guys before we finish about Inside Number 9, the Halloween special this year was phenomenal. Congratulations on that. What was the kind of seed of that idea? How did that sort of come about? Was it inspired? Obviously, felt like there was such a connection between things like Ghostwatch and that kind of thing. I mean, was that the kind of inspiration for you?
Yeah, I mean, if you're going to do a live episode, which was a suggestion made by the BBC to us, we kind of undernailed what to do. But if you're going to do something live, you've got to make the liveness essential to it.
Right.
And so we knew that we wanted to do this sort of fake opening, and it would all go wrong, and to do it in such a way that people really weren't sure. And, there was definitely, we talked about Ghostwatch early on. I don't think either of us
said, "Are you going to do?" And I said, "I think you'd be pleased."
Stephen Volk, I saw, got a lot of tweets that night. I think.
Well, very nice.
It was a brilliant play. It was a sort of screen one, wasn't it?
Yeah. It's a funny thing to think of Ghostwatch now and its popularity in fooling people, because they didn't try to hide it.
They didn't.
We tried to hide it. We began, and it looked like we did the best possible version of trying to make it look like it genuinely broken down. But it's just it's Ghostwatch by Stephen Volk. It's just a drama.
Yeah,
and yet,
right.
if you missed that bit, I suppose you'd be into it and watching essentially an early gestation of Most Haunted, and it would spook you. And
it was a brilliant way of telling a ghost story. There's only so many ways you can approach that material, and this was a really groundbreaking way.
Actually, when you think about it, what it did.
Yeah.
And it got under people's skins for that very reason. So
they got complaints and everything, didn't it? Incredible. Yeah,
I think we got complaints, but they're just annoyed. Apparently gone wrong.
I love that people said they actually, switched over. Were you worried about that happening? Because, at the moment when they kind of rerun The Quiet Night In, I wondered whether or not...
It's like nearly a minute and a half or 2 minutes maybe before anything goes wrong. But I loved the idea of that, because I thought that is where people who think, oh no, this is all part of it, will actually think, oh no, it really has just gone wrong.
I was totally convinced.
So I'm pleased that people turned off, because it meant we did it. We did it correctly, It's maybe stupid to say that, but it was delicious to think people.
But in this day and age where people can go back to things and watch them again on the iPlayer, and also the fact that so many people can get in touch with, that immediately people turned off. They tweeted about it. Oh, I've turned this off, and then someone else would say, no, don't put it back on. It's still on. And it had the actual narrative of what was going on in amongst people watching it was as important to us as the narrative of what we were doing.
It was immersive night, which really only worked for the liveness of the night.
Yes,
it's great that it does exist now, but it was genuinely an exercise in thinking, if we're going to do a live thing, we knew immediately, well, it should go wrong, and it should look like what happens then,
It's true, because like you say, I suppose TV's changed a lot as well, and there's not a lot of point in doing live anymore if you're not going to play on that, I suppose. Yeah.
I mean, and everyone would have known that, and still people were fooled, and that's what we're really excited by.
Yeah,
totally. My only complaint was that I wanted more. I mean, was there ever did you guys ever want to kind of let it go on a little bit longer, or extend to an hour or anything?
No, I don't think we ever had the option. I think it was always just going to be a number 9, and that would be the length.
Did anything actually go wrong in terms of the stuff that you were filming live? Did anything go the way that you hadn't planned or rehearsed it?
Not really. The only thing that we had to be mindful of was how long we were being. because we had to finish it, and we couldn't be too. Because the tendency when you start is you start to gabble because it's live and you're going quick, and then you'd have to slow it down, or you'd finish early. So we couldn't finish early and we couldn't go over. So there was half an eye on saying you can be a bit quicker, or you can slow down the next bit, slow down.
Yeah.
So that was the only thing that we were tweaking during the night.
And all of the bits in the studio, they were actually live. Was all the bits, including when you were sort of walking around with the GoPro, that was all actually
the only
live
bits
as well?
that weren't not live were all the archive,
right?
And the very last bit with the in the night vision.
Fantastic.
And the rest of it was live. Yeah,
brilliant.
And it went really smoothly, didn't it?
It had a phenomenal response, and we're really proud of it. But people are going, you're going to do another one? Well, you can't really.
You can't really do that again. No, that's a one and done, isn't it?
So if you haven't seen it, check it out. I think people still are tricked by it because they watch it on their phones on the iPlayer. And
Definitely.
They think, it must be my phone.
Definitely.
And, they give up on it and watch it on a different device. And
I'm still getting tweets now. When is it going to be shown? Are you going to show the proper one? What are you talking
the proper one. It's amazing. You guys probably get asked this a lot, but do you have a favourite Inside Number 9 episode that you've done? Not including the Halloween one, maybe, but...
That's hard, isn't it? They're all our babies.
Yeah.
I really have a soft spot for the trial of Elizabeth Gatiss because I'm in that period of
my favourite.
time.
Yeah.
We've just ridden from Southampton, where an iron founder had reported a black imp hopping side to side in a chimney stack and taunting him that his hair was fair like a maiden.
Oh, monstrous.
In truth, the imp was nothing but a carrion crow caught by the leg in a griddle.
Indeed. Things are not always as they seem.
It is true. The crow may not have been an imp, but was in fact a familiar. And it did tell us, when questioned, the iron founder was himself bedeviled.
I like the riddle of the Sphinx. The way that goes from a very genteel crossword solving exercise to one of the most horrific things we've ever done. Within half an hour.
Yes.
It was a great episode.
And so what's next for Inside Number 9? Is there a new series coming in the new year?
Yeah, we start filming it next year, and
January.
it'll be on next year at some point when it's all put together. So Series 5 is now written and ready to go.
Fantastic. You guys are so busy. What else have you got going on at the moment? Any other separate projects that we should look out for? Or
we've got little things that are on the go, but we've been completely swamped by getting number 5, Series 5 and 9 ready.
Yeah.
And then we might look at doing something else. Maybe not number 9.
Oh, okay.
Or maybe number 9 if they want more.
Yeah, keep doing more. Fantastic. Guys, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you. Pleasure.
And there we have it, the brilliant Reece Shearsmith and Steve Pemberton. I was gutted I couldn't get any longer. It was a 15-minute slot. I think I overran by 5 minutes as it is and was on the verge of getting booted out of that room, so I had to cut it off there. But let's get into Inside Number 9 and League of Gentlemen and talk about why we love these guys so much. So joining me to discuss all things Inside Number 9 and League of Gentlemen, I was very lucky to catch him while he was in the middle of his UK tour with a very, very special theatre show called Shivers. He's back on the podcast for a second time after discussing all things Fright Fest with me a few weeks ago. It is the brilliant Adam Robinson. Adam, hello.
Hello, Mike. Nice to be back.
It's lovely to have you back. How have you been?
I've been really well. Yeah, very busy.
You've been touring all around the UK with your show. Just remind people again, for anyone who doesn't know, tell us a bit about what you do.
Yeah, so I'm touring a show at the moment called Shivers, which is a ghost story show, which is me and a violin player. And it is in the tradition of M.R. James and I guess in the old Amicus portmanteau anthology horror vibe, and it's 3 chilling tales to a live violin score.
Amazing.
And we're touring, it seems, everywhere.
You are.
Really
well, it was really nice because a group of us came and watched you in Greenwich, which was really good fun.
So grateful.
I was just saying, we all absolutely loved the show. It was phenomenal,
thanks,
and you were
man.
phenomenal.
Oh, that's so kind. Thanks.
I wish that we hadn't drank quite so much after the show, but it was a good night, wasn't it?
It was fun. So lovely. Obviously we got up and we did the show at Greenwich and came down to the bar afterwards. And you and everybody else gave Ben and I a round of applause as we walked into the bar. It was like we got married. It was
so nice. It was so nice. And you were just saying you've come across some other podcast listeners at other shows. That's really nice. Good to know.
We did a gig the other day in Washington, Arts Centre, Washington, and a guy came up to me and said that he was essentially there and that he'd heard me on the podcast, and that was the reason he knew about the show. And I was like, oh, that's so cool, man. Yeah,
love it.
Cool. So I've told him, when he comes down to London, he must get in touch with the group and
exactly,
get together for a drink.
Definitely. definitely.
Yeah.
So I know that you're a fan of what we're going to talk about tonight, and actually, funnily enough, there's kind of links already with what we were just saying. You know what you do in your shows and your writing. How much of an inspiration were these guys to you in your career? Would you say, you know, Reece and Steve and Mark, these League of Gentlemen?
Massively, perhaps without even knowing it. I grew up in West Yorkshire, and went to college in Huddersfield, and so lots of the humour, I think, has a northernness about it. So it really influenced my sense of humour without me necessarily knowing it. And also, they were, all four of them were heroes, and I think remain heroes of mine. And so, as with all heroes, you look to them for inspiration, you look to them for advice. And whenever I saw them on documentaries or anything where they were talking about the things that they liked, in terms of horror, in terms of comedy, I would just flock to it. So, they're absolutely responsible for my love of The Wicker Man. They're responsible for my love of the Amicus films. And I sort of take a step back and look at the fact that I'm touring a theatre show, which in essence is a portmanteau horror thing, I think they're almost entirely responsible.
Totally,
for that, so.
Yeah, and you're so right. And I think it's this weird thing with those guys, and I'm not somebody who tends to kind of want to gush over actors too much most of the time and that kind of thing, but there is something about these guys where it's like, God damn it, I want to be friends with you.
Absolutely.
Because it's not just that they write and perform in brilliant stuff, but it's also that, like you say, they have incredible taste in horror.
Absolutely.
And they've also shaped so much of what I loved growing up. Mark Gatiss, as a lot of people know, like hosted and wrote these kind of documentaries about the history of horror, which is basically what inspired this podcast, made me want to do this. And obviously Reece and Stephen, they pop up on documentaries all the time, like you're saying, DVD commentaries, and they're so smart and they know so much about the genre.
And they clearly love the genre.
They love it.
There's that wonderful documentary that Mark Gatiss did about M.R. James.
Yes, wonderful.
And actually, the guy who plays M.R. James in that documentary I've since gotten to know him a little bit, because he does obviously performances of M.R. James on the stage. He's called Robert Lloyd Parry. And I really recommend people should go and see him, because it's like being with M.R. James. But again, I think that my love of M.R. James and his work blossomed as a result of watching that documentary a few years ago. And I think that, as you say, they just seem to have good taste in this genre. And so when they say, "Oh, you should see this," or "This is fantastic," I tend to seek it out.
Well, basically, the subgenre folk horror was basically invented by Mark Gatiss, essentially. He kind of coined and popularized that term.
Seems so, doesn't it?
So I think they've got a lot to answer for in that way, definitely. So what we're going to do is, because when there was an Inside Number 9, obviously Halloween special, which we're going to talk about in depth. I didn't get the chance to talk about it at the time, but I really wanted to.
Yes.
And I know that we kind of messaged each other about it after it aired and that kind of thing. Didn't get a chance to, and obviously now that we got the chance to chat to them, I was like, well, this is the perfect opportunity to kind of talk through and like sort of talk about our thoughts about Inside Number 9 in general and about that particular episode. But first of all, I want to ask you a bit about League of Gentlemen as well, because right now, obviously, the League of Gentlemen show, the DVD is coming out, and that's really what they're sort of out and about publicising right now and talking about. So you're a fan of the League in general?
Just a huge fan. It's funny, my relationship with that show is odd, because when I first watched it, when it was first on in 1999, I think, wasn't it? I didn't like it.
Yeah,
I was really, really unnerved by it. I don't know.
Well, it's weird.
It's so weird.
Horrible.
I found it so sinister. And now, talking now, it's strange because it's one of my cultural touchstones, really. But I remember not liking it at all. And I don't know where the turn was for me, where I suddenly decided that it was the best thing ever. But I now absolutely adore it, and adored it all the way through college and uni, and would go back to it again and again. Yeah.
I think there's a word that I would use. If I was to sum up their comedy in one word, it would be grotesque. And I mean that in the best possible way, but they excel at being grotesque people, at grotesque jokes, in all kinds of ways, really. And that is, and League of Gentlemen is kind of uncomfortable creepy comedy,
Absolutely.
isn't it?
And they really keep pushing it. That there are physical moments of horror which I think are incredible. The bit where, are we going into spoilers?
We can go into
Yeah,
spoilers.
Fine. So the bit where they discover the beast buried to block the road development, and it's this kind of beast with a goat's face and a hairy body and porcine features, I think they say at one point. And I remember they raise it aloft on this crucifix, and it's horrible and really terrifying. And they just know that genre so well.
That's it, and it is first and foremost a comedy show, but it looks like it's shot like a horror.
Yes,
it's lit like a horror. It sounds like a horror at times,
and yet they've got a laughter track.
Yes,
which is really an interesting to watch now. It's a really interesting juxtaposition. I think.
It is definitely, and I think there are times if I was to recommend to anyone who hadn't seen The League of Gentlemen to watch one episode, it would be the Christmas special.
Yes.
Which in some ways is kind of unrelated to the rest of it. It works as its own. Again, it's like a portmanteau, isn't it? It's 3 short stories done very much in the kind of amicus horror style, and it is funny, but it's the most out and out horror I think that they've gone in League of Gentlemen.
And it is that nod to the old M.R. James Christmas specials. It's a nod to the amicus movies and some of the Hammer portmanteau as well. It is a fantastic piece of work, that Christmas special.
It's amazing. There's a moment, I won't spoil it too much, but there is a moment when the character Papa Lazarou comes, basically it's like a home invasion, comes into this little girl's house and grabs and kidnaps the mum, and it's kind of making these weird noises and sticking his tongue out, and she's screaming. And I remember seeing an interview with Mark Gatiss where he was like, they were in the edit for it, and they were like, "Have we gone too far with this? Have we pushed it? Is this too weird?"
It is pretty unsettling.
It is, yeah.
I think it was the first time. Obviously, we'd seen Papa Lazarou in series 2, but it was the first time I really understood how terrifying he was as a figure.
Yeah, and again, he's a funny figure because I think a lot of people now make jokes, and he's got kind of almost catchphrase kind of jokes about him. But also, I think they kind of created this kind of horror character, in the great tradition of horror monsters. I think they did there with Papa Lazarou, didn't they?
And that subversion of the homely, the danger in the domestic, where he comes in dressed as Santa at Christmas.
Yes,
exactly. To steal away a little girl's mum.
You're my wife now.
And I think that is a nod to one of the Tales from the Crypt stories.
Right.
The name escapes me at the moment, which is about somebody who's escaped from an asylum, as they call it on that, and he's dressed as Father Christmas, basically stalking houses. There are 2 versions of that story on film. One's an American version, and one's the British version. But it's that I'm sure it's a nod to that.
Yes,
because they're so fond of that. That tradition.
Exactly. So it's interesting because, like you say, it was 1999. It's a lot has changed now, and comedy's changed. But they did a show this year. They kind of come together again, and they've done this show. We both saw it. You saw it twice.
I saw it twice.
Amazing. What do you think of the show? And do you think that there's stuff there for a new audience, or is it for fans? I mean, what do you reckon?
It's a really good question. I went with on the first night. I went with somebody who knew the stuff relatively well.
Yeah.
On the second night, I went with I think 4 people, and one of the people who I went with, she didn't really know it very much. She didn't know the League very well at all. And I think a lot was probably lost on her, to be honest, in terms of the fondness that you have for the characters. So when those beloved characters come out, you just you just scream and shout. And
that's it. It's like a character only had to say an opening line,
absolutely.
and they'd get around absolute euphoria in the crowd.
Complete euphoria. And that's how I felt. I felt like I was 17 again, and had the opportunity to see these characters in these original settings on stage. So I think perhaps it was primarily to give it back to the fans, almost to revisit these beloved characters, and I'd be interested to speak to somebody who didn't know the League of Gentlemen at all,
Yeah.
who had seen it and what their point of view was.
Exactly, because it's so out there.
Yeah,
and not only that, there's probably some jokes now that are probably a bit dated, to be perfectly honest.
So there are a few bits that feel old-fashioned.
Now, as you may know, you will all be sleeping with some families in London. And wherever possible, I've tried to make boys sleep with boys and the other ones sleep with the other ones. This just tastes better in my eyes.
It's a tough question, or it's a tough thing to talk about, because I think it's impossible to see it with. I've got such fondness and affection for this
exactly.
for this show.
Yeah, you can't see it when
it's
you're
really,
a fan.
Yeah, it's really hard, and I try to be quite conscious of this stuff, and I try to to question that kind of stuff when I'm watching comedy in particular. But it's really hard to remove those goggles, so to speak, when asking that question of the League of Gentlemen. I find it really hard to know where the line is, to be honest.
Definitely, because I think also part of what they do, it's kind of I have the same blindness with South Park.
Interesting.
South Park, they push and push and push to offend deliberately, right? And the League of Gentlemen don't necessarily do that, but I think their point is they are shocking. They are grotesque.
Yes.
They do push taboos slightly. That's the thing.
Yeah.
And so you don't know quite where something might sit with you or how to feel about it. But also that is, I guess, kind of the point of it.
I think
as well,
so.
isn't it?
And then another sketch will come on, or another part of the show would come on, and be really smartly written and really kind of seemingly quite progressive and considered. And I don't know whether, I just feel like they're intelligent, smart writers who understand what they're doing, rather than are just filling up a sketch with disrespect or whatever.
Totally,
it seems like they're in control of what they're doing.
I think so, and I think everything is very knowing, and also I think there's a reason why probably right now they thought this is a good time to bring this back in terms of sort of Brexit Britain, and they make comments about that kind of thing, because League of Gentlemen, and we haven't even really said, but League of Gentlemen is about these kind of this small northern village of these very, very local types, almost what you'd call it, an American equivalent would be like that kind of exploitation, inbred Hills Have Eyes type stuff, isn't it? It's like a very much British, again, kind of folk horror-y, weird kind of insular village type characters.
And it's that sense of the uncanny, isn't it? So domestic is private is mysterious, mysterious is dangerous.
Yes.
And so they're trying to protect, or certainly the Tubbs and Edward character are trying to protect their localness from outsiders. And that in itself, that the fact that you aren't privy to what's going on over the wall is quite a frightening thing.
Yes.
But I mean, I'd be really interested to have a conversation with people who had come to it for the first time this year. And to see what their point of view is. It's so hard, I think, to remove myself from what I know and love about the show.
Definitely it is. I mean, but I loved the show. That's the thing. And I think, like you say, it's tricky to know with newcomers, but I think to anyone out there who is a fan of the show and didn't get a chance to see the live show, I would say check it out for sure. It's got everything, and it's got some new material in there, which is great as well, hasn't it?
Yeah, the bingo caller, we talked about this
just amazing
before, and Toddy, I think his name is, the character, and it's just one of the most moving, beautifully written things. It's so clever. It's so cleverly written. It's about a bingo caller who sort of describes a relationship he has, and I don't want to spoil it because people should catch it and watch the live version. But it's just beautifully written and really cleverly done with these bingo balls coming out and then being significant to the story. And of course it's written and of course it's scripted, but the way they perform it feels like this off the cuff comments on the story itself, and I just loved it. I thought it was amazing.
It's phenomenal, so good and perfectly encapsulates what those guys are so brilliant at. It's kind of tragic, it's funny, it's dark, but it's also kind of sweet. It's everything rolled into this one monologue, and it's so cleverly written.
You love him, like you just as soon as he opens his mouth, I think you really like. And actually, there was a moment when I watched it on the specials last year where I thought it was going to go really, where he was going to become quite perhaps
Yes.
a right wing character. I
Yes,
don't
a dark character in
Yeah,
some way,
slightly,
yes.
you know. But actually, no. I think he's just he seems like a very sweet character.
That's
who's
what
had
makes
this
it
terrible
even
thing happen.
better in a way,
Yeah,
doesn't it?
yeah,
It's
yeah.
wonderful. And in terms of, before we get into Inside Number 9, because basically, so those four guys, I mean, that's it. That, you know, these four guys have kind of made a name for themselves initially from this, and then they've all gone off and done amazing different things.
Yeah.
I mean, Jeremy Dyson, we just talked about. He's kind of the invisible member of that group in a way, because he's not an actor, he's just one of the writers. But obviously he went off and he's very, you know, successfully this year he wrote and directed with Andy Nyman Ghost Stories, which has done phenomenally well for a kind of small British, again, this kind of Amicus style portmanteau horror. Were you a fan of Ghost Stories?
I just loved it. I loved the stage show.
Yeah.
Right up my street, as you can
Yeah.
imagine.
Yeah,
you
of
know,
course.
seeing Ghost Stories on the stage was a real pivotal and exciting moment. I'd seen The Woman in Black before that, but there was something about it there's something that really spoke to me in terms of what they were doing with that, and you know,
and it's the way that they play, and we'll get to this when we talk about Inside Number 9. But it's playing with the form. It's what they did with the theatre show, and then how they adapted that for film as well. But the way that plays into it is very clever.
And I just think Jeremy Dyson's an incredible writer. Like when I was at college, an English teacher gave us a story from his collection, Never Trust a Rabbit.
Yes.
And it was called City Deep, and it was the first thing I'd ever really, well, it was the first thing I'd read by Jeremy Dyson, and then I got the collection, and he's just a really smart writer. He really understands story and revelation and pacing and stuff like that, and I think he's an excellent writer.
Yeah, really, really great. And again, it's not going to be somebody that you might not even recognise him. I mean, he's not on screen ever, is he? And he's, you know, he's the unsung, unseen member of that.
A few cameos, right?
A few cameos
for the eagle-eyed
geeks
like us.
Exactly. Yeah, but he's done some brilliant stuff. And obviously, Mark Gatiss, it feels like has sort of become a superstar in recent years, hasn't he? Not just in horror circles.
It's so, like, you know, like I say, they're so important to me as cultural figures, and to see the success that they're having, and to see the recognition that they seem to be getting I'm kind of delighted by it. It's weird, isn't it? But I feel really pleased about it.
And, definitely, because they are niche and they are quite off kilter and they are offbeat, and it's nice that they are managing to still make stuff and it do well, and it be so good
and quirky, and still a little still a little bit boundary pushing, and a little bit
always,
you know, like even elements of Sherlock, I think, venture into that darkness that we saw in The League of Gentlemen. And I'm just delighted.
Totally. He's got Dracula coming out next year.
So excited for that. I wonder what they're going to do.
Yeah.
I've no idea how they're going to approach it.
So he's adapting Dracula into a TV series with, I think, Stephen Moffat, who he wrote Sherlock with. Is that right?
I believe so.
Sherlock with it?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. So really interesting. I wonder if, like Sherlock, it's going to be continuous, or is it going to be a mini series? Is it going to be limited? Is it going to be the Dracula story, or something more?
Yeah, are they going to do what they did with Sherlock? Are they going to make it modern?
Yes.
And but I think it's very exciting, because I think, you know, Dracula obviously has been made, and it's an industry, isn't it? Dracula. It's been made and remade many times, and I just wonder whether it will be faithful to the book, or whether it will be something, you know, in its own right. I don't know. I'm very excited. Yeah.
Who knows? We'll find out next year. I wouldn't be surprised if he tries to go period set, almost Hammer-esque. I wouldn't be surprised.
There's no reason why not.
A bit different to Sherlock, maybe.
You know, there's no reason why there shouldn't be a period horror thing. You know, I think I love it when the BBC occasionally do, you know, gothic period pieces. I really like that, and it seems to me that period pieces are really popular, as are horror. Things, particularly at the moment with things like Stranger Things and you know, the success of that.
Did you ever watch the show called Penny Dreadful that was on TV?
I started watching it, and then I don't know why, but I didn't carry on. I can't remember why.
I wasn't the biggest fan. I know a lot of people, it does have quite a fan base. A lot of people really enjoyed it, but that was kind of trying to do that kind of gothic horror. It had kind of the universal monsters and literacy, kind of, like gothic kind of characters, and but all exist in the same universe. And got a little bit messy for me personally. But
I think that's perhaps what it was. I think I remember watching episode 1 and feeling a bit overwhelmed by
it. Is a bit overwhelming. Yeah. It's a cool idea, but
it's a great idea.
I was like, whoa.
I think we could do with more really good, like The Haunting of Hill House, really good, and Sabrina as well. Really good episodic, but linear horror. I guess
that's what you want. Yeah,
I guess so.
And Mark Gatiss has got a December Christmas ghost story as well. I mean,
so excited!
There's just so much stuff. that he's got.
It's called, what is it? The Dead Room, I think.
The
it's
Dead
called.
Room. I don't think it's got an air date confirmed yet, but it's going to be in the build up to Christmas on BBC 4. So.
I'm so pleased because when he did the track tape Midworth a few years ago, it really, for me, when I watched it, I was so impressed about how he'd retained that sensibility from the old Christmas ghost stories, and it really felt like it belonged to
definitely
that, as well as having that slightly shiny, sheeny modernness about it. And so I'm sure it will, because he obviously
I'm sure
he knows what he's doing.
He knows what he's doing.
But I really think it's going to be good.
And he's doing some radio plays, some actual M.R. James adaptations, isn't he? With Neil Brand as well.
That is so exciting.
Yeah, this is all just catnip for me, basically.
Me too. I mean, M.R. James, I read over and over and over again. I revisit that stuff all the time, and I really genuinely think that, particularly the original stories, the more you read them, the better they get. And it's a strange thing, because there's a lot of writers, a lot of stories, novels, whatever, that you could actually tire of by rereading. M.R. James, I just think, becomes richer and richer and richer, and all the stuff that seems like admin in M.R. James suddenly becomes very significant. So any adaptations, I'm all over them.
And what is brilliant about it is that, like you say, they're so well written, and yet these adaptations as well bring a whole new dimension to them. I mean, the best ones do, and we won't drone on about this too much because I have for hours and hours on this podcast. But Whistle and I'll Come To You and all these things that they're kind of this weird, like almost like art house cinema that they lend to these short stories, and it's just incredible, isn't it?
I rewatched the Treasure of Abbot Thomas the other day.
Oh God,
and
that really creeped me out.
It's really creepy. M.R. James is often described as having an economy in his writing. In terms of being very careful about the word. He's not particularly decorative text that he uses. And that particular episode, I think, is like the televisual version of that.
Yes.
Perhaps it was financial constraints, but every beat feels considered, and things that look, in inverted commas, cheap, because perhaps because of necessity, are really frightening.
Yes.
And just work amazingly effectively.
Yes. It's just all of them have that brilliantly slow build.
They do.
To then an absolute shocking, like, my heart has stopped and jumped into my mouth moment towards the end.
Which is exactly what the tales do.
Yes,
I think.
Just wonderful.
The Jamesian wallop, I think, it's been described as in the past.
Absolutely is. It's wonderful. Okay, well, we're going to get on to Inside Number 9 in a minute. Just before we get into all that, I'm going to ask you one difficult question. What's your favourite League of Gentlemen character?
Oh, that's so hard. I'm going to have to go with Pauline, I think.
Yeah.
I'm going to have to.
That was going to be my pick. Now I'm going to have to think of a different one. But Pauline is incredible. Who else do I love? I do love, even though it's a little bit dated now, but I do love Hare Lip. But that's mainly because I love Steve Pemberton so much.
His performance is hell. Again, in the Christmas one where it becomes a vampire story. And a vampire story with a difference. Something happens. I don't want to ruin it because people should watch it. But there are unexpected things in that vampire story, and his performance is great.
Actually, do you know who I absolutely love as well? Talking for Pauline, I love Ross. Reece Shearsmith's Ross is just the most kind of vile, nasty man, and Reece Shearsmith plays him so well,
and becomes more and more vile, doesn't he? As the series goes on,
horrible man.
And he seems like the hero, but then he just we were talking before, weren't we, about how the League of Gentlemen sets itself apart from sketch comedy, and I think a big part of that is that the characters grow, and they develop. So it's not just the same thing over and over again.
Exactly.
And Ross is a good example of that, isn't he?
Yes, that's it. It is a sketch comedy, but it's not. You suddenly realise when you return to these sketches again and again, things have developed, things have evolved from the last time we saw them.
They seem to learn things.
Yes,
which is really interesting.
And now you have a real feeling of history with all these characters by this point, you know.
And the things that have happened to them, in general, there's a canon to it, isn't there? And so you remember that this thing happened to that character.
Exactly.
And that has influenced the way they sort of are now.
And just very briefly, what about the very weird film League of Gentlemen's Apocalypse? What were your thoughts on that? Because again, massive flop. People didn't like it at all. Again, this is something I respect about these guys. They tried something totally different and bold, and they went in quite a weird direction with it.
They did. But I mean, it's 90 minutes of Jeff Tips. So and I love Jeff. Jeff's another character. I'm glad I've been able to slip him in because I said Paul Lead is my favourite, but Jeff I love. And by that point, I think I was so enamoured with them. I sort of felt, you know what, you guys can do what you want.
Yeah.
If you want to try, you go ahead and do something completely different.
Yeah.
Take us out of Royston Vasey. That's cool.
I kind of like and this is something we're going to get to with the Inside Number 9 episode, them playing themselves as writers and actors as well. I think it's quite funny, and especially the way that they portray themselves, especially Reece. It's quite funny.
It is, and it's quite unflinching, isn't it?
Yeah.
Is it maybe this was before Extras, I guess, wasn't it?
I think it was.
So it's just
I think it would have been about that time, wouldn't it? Sort of early noughties.
Yeah, this idea of a twisted version of yourself, I think is great. I think it's and there's a little gag about Calderdale in there, which is where I'm from. So some great stuff in that film.
Yeah.
Perhaps as a complete thing, it's not as I don't know. Perhaps it's not as engrossing as the TV show. Maybe the stepping into the medieval setting is sort of unexpected. But I don't know. Again, I just think it was bold, and I like them for their boldness.
Yeah, me too. I love the opening sequence. Remember the opening scene where you've got Jeremy Dyson getting killed by his own characters, played by Michael Sheen.
Played by Michael Sheen, absolutely.
It's a brilliant opening scene.
It's really frightening.
Yeah, really frightening.
Really funny.
Yeah.
But you're not real.
We are now.
And just seeing Tubbs on the toilet and it's just like, right, we're back with these guys now.
So good.
I've got a lot of fondness for it.
Yeah, definitely, me too. All right, let's get into Inside Number 9. Before we get into, we'll finish this chat with a kind of spoilery chat about the Halloween episode. Cool. But until then, just for people who haven't seen it, I want you to give us a little bit of info about what is Inside Number 9, first of all, for people who don't know it.
It's a hard thing to give you a synopsis for, isn't it?
Yeah.
But essentially, it's a weekly anthology show. Each episode takes place inside Number 9, and be that an address, a sleeper carriage, or a hotel room, or a dressing room. But the content of each story is completely different. So you have a completely different narrative, completely different cast of characters. I guess the commonality would be that they're all have a sort of dark humour to them.
Yeah.
But that's more or less the only thing that they all share.
Exactly,
right?
yeah. And they usually have some kind of twist at the end.
They do.
They work towards that. I think there's something kind of Twilight Zone-y about it.
Absolutely.
In the way that it usually builds to an end.
Yeah.
That will reveal something in some way.
I think that, I think the word twist is sometimes overused, isn't it? And I think that it seems to suggest, I don't know. I think good writing with surprises in.
Yes.
Everyone goes, that's a twist. It's very twisty.
Yes.
And yes, there are twists. There's no question that Inside Number 9 has twists in it. But I think it's just very, very good genre writing.
Really good. And actually, what they are plays, I think, a lot of the time. They are, I suppose by the definition, like we said, they all take place in a space most of the time. So they are television plays in the old-fashioned sense, which I love as well. Not to say that they're not also quite interesting visually a lot of the time, but they are usually quite contained.
They are.
Yeah.
They do a lot with the walls that they've sort of built around themselves, don't they? So they've given themselves this parameter of it has to take place inside Number 9.
Yes.
And they find ingenious ways to make absolutely brilliant and very, very different pieces of work.
Yeah.
I'm a huge fan of Inside Number 9.
Me too. And like you say, it will range from a kind of a gothic horror set in a haunted house to a kind of bedroom farce set in a hotel corridor, or
in iambic pentameter, right?
Iambic pentameter. And it can to a completely silent, dialogueless episode that is kind of slapstick of Laurel and Hardy-esque kind of physical gags and everything. And they again try their hand at everything.
They do. And I remember hearing somebody describe working for, writing for Doctor Who being the best thing in the world because you can literally take it anywhere.
Yes.
And although this tends to take place, on Earth, that is about the only constraint they give themselves. There are some historical ones.
Yeah.
There are some, as you say, some ones that take us completely outside of the bounds of what realism.
Yeah. They could go in space, couldn't they?
They
could
absolutely
have an Apollo
could.
9 or something.
Absolutely could.
Copyright
Mike Munster. Get that down. Get that down. Yeah.
It's wonderful. So I think most of the episodes are available on Netflix, aren't they? I don't know whether the very latest season is out there.
Yeah.
But most of them.
I think 1 to 3 definitely are. Maybe 4 is, but certainly 1 to 3.
Yeah. And I would say, give them all a watch them in order, but you don't have to. And if you don't, Adam, do you have any recommendations of personal favourites that you would recommend?
The problem I have, Mike, is I love more or less all of them. So I'm not. I've got loads to recommend, but shall I just chuck out a few?
Yeah, go on.
So I really love The Harrowing, which is series 1, episode 6, which is the gothic horror episode with the extraordinarily dark climax.
Almost what did you call it? A Jamesian wallop. Almost have that at the end, doesn't it?
For sure.
Yeah.
But fun up until that point, really fun, and then suddenly they sort of pull the rug out a little bit. So that I love. I really love La Couchette, which is the first episode of series 2.
The train carriage.
The train carriage.
My
I just
favourite.
think it's just brilliantly inventive.
Yeah.
And fantastic storytelling and that double bluff stuff that some writers are particularly good at. So that one I think is worth watching. Oh man, there are so many. The 12 Days of Christine is incredible.
Yeah, tragic.
Yeah.
I know you said before you were a big fan of the very first episode, Sardines, which is, and I think that was a great episode that kind of showed you what you were in for, because it's essentially a whole TV half-hour set inside a wardrobe.
Exactly.
It's set in a closet as these people cram in and play this game of what a stupid game Sardines is as well, which I think is what they joke about in the episode as well. What a ridiculous game, kind of like hide and seek, but you have to hide with them when you find
that's
them,
right.
don't you?
And I think I could be wrong, but it seems like they set themselves a challenge of how small can we make these walls? How small can we make this setting? And it is ingenious, and Tim Key's performance in that is
amazing.
Wonderful.
It's amazing.
I remember, as you say, watching that episode and just thinking, oh my goodness, this is going to be amazing.
Yes.
If they keep this up,
this
is going to be amazing. And they have. All the way through,
It's brilliant.
Yeah.
I would say I'm a big fan of a very kind of Witchfinder generally episode called The Trial of Elizabeth Gadd, which is wonderful, isn't it?
And again, very surprising.
Very surprising. It's creepy, but it's also got some it's so funny. The wordplay, the language, they really kind of play with that, don't they?
That's right.
And I also love, and I think this in some way links to what we're going to talk about with the Halloween special, but they did a Christmas special, which I just thought was phenomenal. And again, kind of takes this format of old 70s TV specials and then kind of flips it on its head, towards the end with a brilliant twist.
If you were to pay real careful attention to that episode, which is it called The Devil of Christmas?
That's it, The Devil of Christmas,
I think you would see almost the blueprint of the Halloween
100%,
special.
definitely.
You can see them really starting to play around with the format and the idea of what they can do.
Yes.
I loved it too.
I think that's the thing, and we'll get into this with the Halloween discussion, but I think also the fun they have with Inside Number 9 is they play with television, the idea of television, and that, like you said, they started doing that with the Christmas one. And they play with it even more because television, we've talked about it on this podcast now, it's a weird thing now where what is the difference between TV and film? Is there a difference anymore? And with Netflix and I don't know, films in some way getting more they create shared universes and episodes now, and TV is becoming more and more cinematic, and where's the divide anymore? And I think they still kind of hone in on that old-fashioned divide.
They do, and you've said some of them could be played out as plays.
Yes,
absolutely. Play for today on TV, but also you could see it staged and it would work really well. But some of them, it has to be on television.
Yes.
So do you remember there's one called Cold Comfort as well, which is set in the call centre?
Oh my god! And again, another visual element that comes into play on the Halloween one. I think
Yes.
there's a few different, like almost nods to their previous Inside Number 9s.
And again, you have to have that on TV. It has to be on TV. It has to really be half an hour.
Yeah.
I don't think you could endure much longer than half an hour in that format. And I completely agree with you. I think that's really fascinating what you said, that they use telly.
Yeah.
Really, really in a really smart way.
Yeah. Amazing. Well, let's get into it then. So basically, the Halloween episode, this aired, I think, on Halloween or maybe the day before Halloween this year. And no one knew anything about it. And Reece and Steve deliberately kind of didn't do any press for it and didn't reveal anything. All we knew was that it was going to be a live episode. They were going to perform it live. And I think what we all thought was going to happen, which is how it begins, which was that it was going to be like a traditional episode of Inside Number 9, all set in one place with these actors, but they will be performing it as you would a play. So they will be performing it live, where they might fluff lines. And they've done this before, haven't they? With like Coronation Street, have done live episodes.
They have.
And
I remember a live Coronation Street episode.
And I think EastEnders. There's been a bit of a British tradition.
It's not unprecedented.
They have done that, haven't they?
Yeah.
And that's kind of what we expect. And I'm going to spoil it now. We're going to go into it. But basically, what happens is, about 10 minutes in, this kind of, you set up with this. It's called Deadline.
Yeah.
Deadline, and you're set up with this character, Steve Pemberton, and he comes in and there's a phone call and there's some strange stuff happening, and then as Reece enters the scene, the sound completely dips, doesn't it? It completely cuts out. And then we get the kind of BBC fault, card come up to sort of say there's been technical issues. And then obviously it turns out that's all part of this gag, and that it's actually about a haunted television studio, and there's all this crazy stuff happening, and we'll get into it. But and we both, what's quite interesting is we both watched this in different circumstances. So
we did.
You watched it on catch up.
I did, yeah.
Because you didn't get a chance to, you're too busy performing in shows.
We were, we were doing a show that night.
Yeah.
So I was very sad that I knew that I was gonna miss it, and I was very sad about that. What I wasn't prepared for was when I actually watched it, how sad I was that I had missed it live, because of exactly what you said. I thought it was just going to be a live episode of Inside Number 9.
Yes.
It turned out to be something more tricksy.
It turned out to be Stephen Volk Ghostwatch, almost.
Yeah, absolutely.
A kind of modern twist on that, didn't it?
For 2018, it did. Yeah.
I've got to say it totally got me, because why wouldn't it, in a way? And this is something that I can't remember the last time something like this happened, unless you're talking about sport events or something. You're not going to all sit and watch something live like this in your living room together and all experience something at the same time. And because they had publicised it so much, this is live, and so me and Rihanna were like, yeah, we're absolutely going to watch it live. We're going to stay in and we're going to watch it, because it's going to be the thrill of watching it live.
And isn't that interesting as well? I was talking only the other day with a couple of friends about how live TV is kind of fading, isn't it?
A thing of the
Why
past.
would you watch it when it's on? Yeah. There's no need anymore, really.
And that's the thing. And I guess, again, these guys, it's like, if they're going to get a chance to do a live episode, you've got to do something like what they did.
Yeah.
Because otherwise, what's the point, in a way?
Precisely.
Because you don't need it anymore, live television. So, we sat there thinking, yep, this is the live. And then that moment when the sound dipped and we got the technical fault error, I was... my heart sank.
Was it really? Wow.
We both went, oh, those poor guys. We just felt so bad for them, because there'd been so much build up, and we really genuinely believed, oh shit, this is fucked up. And we were like, what's going to happen? Are they just going to start it again? They'll start from the beginning. Maybe they'll extend the time slot and let us watch it. But it went back to it, and then the sound dipped a second time. And on the second time, we were like, oh shit, well, this has really gone wrong. This is over. And about 5 seconds later, we both were like, there's that moment then on the second time round when you go, hang on a minute, what's really happening here, kind of thing.
When I'm caught up with some of the correspondence on Twitter and stuff like that, I was utterly thrilled. It's so fun what they did.
It was such a genius idea.
Somebody told me as well that somebody I know told me that somebody they know, their parents were watching it and the sound dipped out, and they basically spent the next hour trying to fix their television and didn't continue watching television for the rest of the evening. They just turned it off, which I think is just amazing.
It's amazing. It's brilliant. Well, I know a lot of people that tweeted to say they turned it off. They thought, well, it's fucked, and they turned it off, or they turned over, and that's like, oh, it's tragic. And
so
that's a real risk that they must have taken.
But I'm almost more pleased that some people did that. I think it's...
Well, it convinced everyone. everyone, right?
Yeah,
It convinced everyone.
Yeah.
And because I think actually because it was the next moment when people turned off because. They basically then make an announcement. They're like, "We're really sorry, it's not working. We're therefore going to rerun an old episode of episode number 9." And they start playing the episode I mentioned earlier, which is the silent kind of comedy episode of these two burglars in this house.
A Quiet Night In, I think.
A Quiet Night In.
Yeah.
And they begin, and it begins exactly in the way that the original episode does. But of course, it's not. And it's so genius because they get this kind of they replicate the shots, except that you see this creepy fucking thing in the background that wasn't there first time round.
That's right. You get the sort of apparition appearing in the garden, and when you first see that apparition as well, it's really subtle. Like it becomes less subtle like a couple of seconds later, but I was like, oh my goodness, this is very smart and very bold. And again, as you say, we're what 12-13 minutes into the episode by now of a half an hour episode. It's so bold.
It's
I think
so bold because
brilliant.
you really do risk, and they did lose people. That's the thing, because if you weren't switched on enough, or if you didn't even know, again, if this was the first time you'd ever watched Inside Number 9, you wouldn't have had a clue.
Exactly. If you're a newcomer, I think. But I tell you what I thought, and I might be wrong about this. I don't watch a lot of TV live, as we just sort of said. The card that came up and the continuity announcer who announced that it had gone wrong. Does that happen anymore? Do they still do that?
I have no idea, to be honest, because like you say, I don't watch television that much either, which is terrible because I work in television, but I have no idea. I don't know. It looked convincing enough to me.
It looked convincing. Like, obviously I can say this with the luxury of watching it on catch-up, can't I? But I watched that and I thought, even when I saw that, I was like, no, this is a trick. Obviously, I was watching the catch-up, so I don't know what they would have done if there'd been an actual issue. But part of my brain was going, would they not have lots of insurance, backup? I don't know. Maybe they wouldn't. But I thought that was a lovely nod, and the beginning of the episode was a lovely nod to Ghostwatch.
Yes.
And then those bits in themselves become possibly the creepiest thing in the whole thing.
Totally, because then you get the voices occurring in the background of the continuity announcer.
And she sounds like she's crying at one point.
Yes.
There's a bit where her voice she sounds like she's about to cry.
Yeah.
And all she's saying is something like, we're going to get this back in a minute or something. Very banal and functional. And I was just like, that's terrifying. Why is she crying? What's going on? And then, as you say, you get these whispers. And
then suddenly it's like, it reminded me a little bit of something we talked about recently, where we talked about things like marble hornets and these kind of virally YouTube-y, these kind of glitches that you get in the TV, signal, and suddenly the frame is upside down and weird stuff is going on, and it always just very uneasy, isn't it?
Totally uneasy. And then you feel, when she gets disposed of, we're in spoiler territory now. You can hear that she's sort of screams. Something happens, and we hear a beginning of a scream from her. At that point, you're on your own.
Yes.
So the BBC have abandoned you.
Exactly.
To whatever is going to happen next.
Yeah.
So you don't have that security of the expert going, oh, well, this is strange, but it's all cool. We'll put this other episode on. Then off she goes.
Yeah.
And that, to me, is when the terror starts to be ramped up.
It's genius. And then the second half of the episode is essentially then the actual live element that we were promised, because and you literally see the time. There's a clock in the corner that is correct, and you see Reece and Steve playing themselves as actors in the dressing room, thinking the live broadcast has gone.
Yeah.
And they're just hanging out until they discover they're actually on BBC Two.
Yeah.
They get. What's brilliant is that they were reading tweets that were actually tweets at the time.
Yeah.
And you see there is a TV monitor on in the room that they're in, and they turn on to BBC Two and they look at themselves.
Yeah.
And then they see that they're on camera, and there's a moment when they switch over to BBC One, and that was exactly what was on BBC One. So they were watching themselves on live television at that point, right?
Because it was the Brazilian president
That's it. Election results.
Yeah. So it had to be. And then you said earlier about we get them being themselves.
Yes. Yeah.
And it's so funny.
So angry. Reece is so angry all the time.
When I think Steve comes in and says, "Oh, there's a chance that they might be at a replay at 11 o'clock," and Reece goes, "Tonight." And he goes, yeah. And he goes, pathetic.
Pathetic.
It's just fantastic.
And he goes, "You've got a Wi-Fi." I haven't been given the Wi-Fi code. He's just angry at everything. Really funny.
Yeah.
And
bitching
then,
about Stephanie Cole as well, which is just amazing. Yeah,
and then they go, BBC One. No, it can't be BBC One. Put on BBC Three. Oh, it doesn't exist
Yeah,
anymore. What are you
yeah.
talking about? It doesn't exist. It's online.
Yeah.
And again, I do feel like they are commenting on television and how
think
much
so.
television has changed.
Yeah, I
and,
think so.
What is TV anymore?
Yeah,
and
yeah.
all this kind of thing. It's really clever.
That's it. I rewatched it at the weekend, and it's even more smart than I thought it was the first time I watched it. It definitely demands a rewatch.
It does.
So,
It does. So the only thing I would say, and I know we both kind of felt this, and I guess I mean this in the best possible way. The complaint I have was that it felt just too brief. Ghostwatch has the luxury of being 90 minutes long, so it builds that kind of realism, and then it gives it time once it's kind of flipped it.
It does.
Whereas this didn't have time to, like you say, we were about 10-15 minutes in, which is halfway through the episode before it then has to quickly conclude everything.
I think that's right. It's exactly how I felt. I really wanted it to be 60 minutes.
Yeah. And I almost thought, because I thought it was going to do a Ghostwatch, which Ghostwatch was originally a 60-minute scheduled program.
That's right.
And they said, we've cancelled the next program so that we can give you more of this.
Yeah.
And I thought, please God, let that be. Maybe this was going to be an hour episode all along. Sadly, it wasn't.
No, sadly not. And I agree. It just would have allowed those bits of narrative to stretch their legs a bit more. Some of the climaxes come on really quickly, and they work brilliantly, but they come on really quickly. They don't creep up on you. They sort of jump out of the cupboard. That is, I agree, it's my only complaint really. I wanted it to be longer and take its time.
Because it could have really built that creepiness.
Because I rewatched Ghostwatch last week with a couple of people who hadn't seen it before, and it's the first time I've seen it for maybe 5 or 6 years. And it's so subtle at times. I mean, it gets really full on towards the end, but at times it's so subtle. And this was like my fourth or fifth time watching it, and I was having to watch really carefully to spot all the...
You have to pause.
You do have to pause.
There's a moment in Ghostwatch, and I know a lot of people tweeted at me for never mentioning this when we talked about Ghostwatch for about an hour and a half. I never mentioned this one moment that terrified millions of people, which is where you see Pipe stood in the bedroom.
Yes.
There's that kind of fuzzy image of him in front of the curtain. And that's because the first time I watched it, I don't think I even spotted that he was there.
And he's standing outside, apparently, by the bus at one point. He's in the reflection of the window at one point. And so that subtlety that you just get to build and build and build and build. I think that the Halloween special would have been able to do that if it had been longer.
Definitely.
That said, I think they are masters at 30-minute television episodes.
They are. They are. That's the thing. And I do think, I think this was a phenomenal achievement, and it was an amazing experience. It's going to be a TV watching experience I will never ever forget, and that's not something that you get very often anymore, right? So it's amazing in that respect. Will I ever watch it again, other than for research for things like this? I don't know. Whereas there are so many Inside Number 9 episodes that are just like these fantastic, brilliant, tightly written, well performed little plays that are really clever. As dramas. With this, it was kind of an experiment that was great as a one-off, as a Halloween trick, And
maybe before Ghostwatch was available on DVD, I missed Ghostwatch in the 90s. I didn't see it. I think I was a little too young, perhaps.
And it's never been broadcast since.
It's never been broadcast since, and it was a bit of a mythical thing that people talked about.
Right.
There's an interesting thing with this where it almost perhaps can't be that, because unless they never here's the thing, unless they never release it, unless it never ends up on a DVD or on Netflix or something, unless it just go but that would be interesting, wouldn't it, if they refused to release it and it
I know, I wonder, because you almost want that to be the case in a way. I don't know.
So in 20 years we're talking to young people and saying, oh, there was this thing on TV, you won't believe what they did.
You won't believe what they did. But, and again, however, going back on that, Ghostwatch, when I did finally watch it, even though I knew it was a hoax, I knew it was basically a 90-minute drama, it still worked. It's
still works brilliantly.
phenomenal.
Yeah.
And again, I don't want to take anything away. I do think this Inside Number 9 was brilliant, but I think, again, because it doesn't have that luxury of being able to build a proper world as much as Ghostwatch did, it doesn't quite have that. I don't know if it will still have that power in 20 years' time that Ghostwatch still does now. You know?
Well, I mean, by that point, maybe live TV just as
yes,
the idea of
such a novelty,
and the idea of something messing up in that way, people would be like, nah,
what's
that never
about?
would have happened. They would, you know,
you need like the kind of like Black Mirror, like kind of buffering symbol. That's what you need instead, don't you? Rather than the TV signal. But it is. I mean, that's the thing. It's going to be one of those television events, and I do think people were talking about it, and people will be talking about it for a long time. You know?
And some lovely Easter eggs in there.
Yes,
as well.
go on.
It seems to me that the apparition at the window in A Quiet Night In it basically looks just like the descriptions of pipes that people phone into the studio in Ghostwatch.
Yes.
So not the sort of studio live version of pipes as he appears in the film, but how people describe him. So wearing a dress with these kind of dark eyes with this bald head. So I wondered if that was I'm confident to say.
That's NFT too. Ignore that.
I'm confident, I think, to say that it must be a direct nod, mustn't it?
Mustn't it? I'll ask them. Yeah.
And then the other thing is, I checked this a couple of times. Arthur Flitwick, who's Steve's character in the story at the beginning, his phone number is Pop's rental home phone number in the League of Gentlemen, which
amazing.
is 444. 444-244.
Brilliant.
So, yeah.
I love it. Can you do a Pops impression?
Not that I'd be prepared to broadcast.
No, fair enough. I love it. And I'm sure there are so many moments like that throughout. Because like we talked about it already, but like in loads of Inside Number 9, League of Gentlemen, Psychoville even, you'll see these nods and Easter eggs and, you know.
I like that intertextuality, actually. I think it's cool. I think I don't mind an in-joke.
No.
At all.
As long as it's not alienating.
Yeah.
You know, it's one of those things where if you spot it, great. If you don't, it doesn't matter. That's the difference, isn't it?
There's apparently a rabbit in each of the episodes of Inside Number 9, like
Is
this
there?
statue of a rabbit. I'm sure I've read something about this.
Probably, yeah.
Which I will at some point go back, I'm sure, like the fanboy that I am.
Exactly.
And spot them all. But I like that. I think it's nice. It's a nod and a wink to the fans, isn't it? I suppose.
Definitely.
Yeah.
And like you say, it felt like the kind of next step on from the Christmas special that we were talking about, which very much kind of took the old 70s drama tradition, but then really gave it a creepy new light.
It did, and that was about 10 minutes in before it rewound the scene, didn't it?
Right.
And it was.
That's right, and revealed itself for what it was.
Yeah, I'm really excited to see what they might do next. Actually,
amazing. Adam, thank you so much for joining me.
Thanks so
this.
much. Thanks for having
me
back.
It's been fun to geek out over all this stuff, isn't it?
I mean, I could have stayed here for another 3 hours, but that would not have been good listening for your listeners.
I know, that's the problem. It's one of those things where I'm very aware that I don't know how many listeners outside of the UK we have, but God knows what they, you know, if they know any of this stuff or know what we're talking about.
Get online, order the DVDs, and you can re-listen to this episode.
Exactly. Brilliant. Adam, where can people find you if they want to find any info about your shows or anything about you online?
So I'm on Twitter as at Adam_Z, Z-E-D. Our show is at Dark Light Book. And we're on Facebook. The Book of Darkness and Light is the name of our theatre company, and they can come and find us on there and check out the dates and come see the show if they haven't already.
Definitely. We'll link to the website and the show notes and stuff as well. Mate. Amazing. Thank you very much.
Thanks so much.
That's it for now. Thank you very much for listening, and a big thank you to my guest Adam Robinson and to my brilliant interviewees Steve Pemberton and Reece Shearsmith. That was an absolute bucket list moment for me to get to sit and chat to those guys. So, what did you think of the Inside Number 9 Halloween special? And what did you think of the League of Gentlemen's new live tour? Did you get a chance to see it? Get in touch. You can email us. The email address is evolutionofhorror@gmail.com. You can also find us on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and Letterboxd. And don't forget, please do subscribe to us on iTunes or whatever podcast platform you use. And if you get a minute, please do leave us a nice rating or review, preferably a nice 5-star one if you're feeling generous. It helps boost the numbers. It helps the podcast get noticed by new listeners, and it makes me very, very happy. Thank you very, very much for listening, and keep your eyes peeled for more bonus content coming later this month on the Evolution of Horror.